how much bread do you have?
Come on.
What it tells them is, take an inventory of your assets.
Right.
You see, Jesus doesn't care what you don't have. He ain't interested in that. He's interested in you recognizing what he's given you to work with. And the Lord always gives you something to work with when he calls you to go to work. God doesn't tell you to go do something with nothing. God gives you something to work with. What he wants to know is, can you quit acting broke for long enough to take an inventory of your assets and see what he's putting in your money? So what he says is, how much bread do you have? And do you all happen to remember the answer? The answer is 5 and 2 fish. Let me ask you again. I'm going to ask you how much bread you have, and you give me the answer. All right? Jesus says, how many loaves do you have? And they say what? 5 and 2 fish. Let's do it one more time. How many loaves do you have? 5 and 2 fish. Now you notice Jesus didn't ask about this. He didn't ask about fish. He said, how much bread do you have? And they said, 5 and 2 fish. And if you quit acting broke and start taking an inventory of what God has given you, you'll discover you have this and that. And if we're going to be a blessing, we got to quit acting broke. We got to take an inventory of our assets. God has given us something to work with. We got to learn people with needs and not illusions. We got to learn to embrace people with needs and not escape. We got to learn to take an inventory of our assets. And then finally, we got to learn how to give thanks and give it away. Look what happens when they bring to Jesus what they have. After they quit acting broke, and he says, take an inventory of their assets. They got 5 loaves and 2 fish. They bring them to Jesus. And then what Jesus does is Jesus looks up to heaven. He blessed it. He broke it. And he gave it away. And if you're going to be a blessing, you got to learn to give thanks and give away. See, because you cannot be grateful and greedy simultaneously. How are you going to be thankful to God and then you're going to keep it all to yourself? The only reason to be greedy is if you assume that there's not enough. If you assume that what I have here is all that's going to be, I better keep it because there ain't no more coming. That's the only reason to be greedy. But when you know that your blessings come from the Lord, it don't make sense to be greedy. Because what you got, you didn't get it on your own. What you got today was a gift. And if the one who gave it yesterday, if he gave it yesterday, he can give it today. And if he gave it today, he can give it tomorrow. And whatever your needs are, he can supply according to his riches and glory. So what sense does it make for you to try to hold on to something when God can give you exceedingly abundantly beyond what you can ask for? And you can't be a blessing until you learn how to give it away. And once you give it, You've made room for another blessing in your life. It's hard for God to bless some people because they won't make room for it. You got to make room for your blessing. And the way you make room for your blessing is when you open your life to others. You have to open your life for others. You have to share what you have with others so that there's room for God to bless you again, so that you can be a channel through which God blesses others, so that you don't try to be a container of God's blessing, but a conduit through which God reaches others. And if we don't learn to be a blessing, we've got to learn that people with needs are not nuisances. We've got to learn to embrace needs and not escape. We've got to learn to take an inventory of our assets. And we have to learn to give thanks and to give it away. When my son was in elementary school, I took him and one of his best friends, Brandon, to this little place that was called Discovery Zone. And Discovery Zone was like an indoor playground, and they had some computer games, and depending on how many points you got tickets. And then you would take the tickets to exchange the tickets for a toy. And one day they were there, and our son had 1,200 tickets, and his friend Brandon had 800 tickets. And they were standing there looking together and what they ought to get. And then after they finished turning in the tickets, my son had a 700 ticket toy, and Brandon had a 1,300 ticket toy. Now look what happened. My son started out with 1,200 tickets. He ends up with a 700 ticket toy. Brandon had 800 tickets. He ends up with a 1,300 ticket toy. You see the problem for me? So after we dropped off Brandon, and I started talking to my son, and I commended him for being generous. And then I started doing the daddy thing, trying to tell you, can't let your boys take advantage of you. Because you started out with 1,200 tickets, and then you ended up with a 700 ticket toy. He started out with 800, had a 1,300 ticket toy. And after I finished doing my daddy thing about not letting your friends take advantage of you, my 6-year-old son said, Daddy, we're friends.